Hello, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. If you're here for the first time, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel for everything else that goes on here. We have the Wheel of Time show, Easing the Reader, readings from myself from my work, reviews and fantasy news and all that kind of stuff. So with me today is the author of the brilliant Chronicles of Gensokai, Sairo's Claw, which you can see as the newest one of that, and also she's the head of Quarrencon, all these different kinds of things. It is the brilliant Virginia McClain.
It didn't work. I've just noticed though that Sairo's Claw is mirrored or backwards, so
yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
It looks good. It's like he's over your shoulder, like just kind of like just looking out for you, just in case. You know, like when like when you have your dog and someone strange comes into your house and they kind of just sit there, you just like stare at the other person. That's what he's kind of doing.
Sairo likes to glare at people, so that's appropriate.
Like, don't make a wrong move, otherwise I've got you. How are you? How's it going?
I'm all right. I'm doing okay. It's been a weird time. My dog was really sick last week, which was one of the reasons we had to cancel for the third or fourth time.
Yeah. I think this is fifth time lucky. I think.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm pleased to be here, and I'm pleased that my dog is still here.
Yes, me too.
She's snoozing behind me. I don't know.
He's in here too. He's over here. He'll probably make an appearance at some point.
Yeah, I would if I can. I don't know if I can get the thing to recognize that she's there, because of course she's in the background and I've got the background.
Yeah. No, the big ones there instead.
Yeah.
So you're American, but you live in Canada, don't you, as well? So you're in between Canada Day and Independence Day. So which one do you like? Do you just ignore them both, or do you just have like full...
I ignore them both because I'm not a huge fan of either country's history. I've never been huge into nationalism in general, and especially lately, I'm not super proud of either country. So just kind of giving them both a miss. I mean, like colonialism is bad.
It's not great.
It's bad everywhere it's happened, right? So
yeah. And I'm from I grew up in a country that basically invented it as well, which is fantastic. So it's kind of like we did that. Yeah, it was.
So you just started that for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been versions of that throughout history prior to and it was like the Romans really kicked it off.
Romans loved it. Yeah, they loved the bit.
Or England, and then it was like England was just like, well, we learned from the best.
Yes.
And then...
it's like everyone's been doing it to us. The Scandinavians did it. The Romans did it. The French did it. Let's just do it to everyone and just teach them all a lesson. And they did. They taught everyone a real lesson. Well, it's fun around this time, like, because obviously I live in Ireland now, and we have like kind of like the joke version of nationalism, which is like Patrick's Day. Everyone's like, yeah, Patrick's Day, like, and everyone just kind of gets drunk. In other countries, but in Ireland, basically, we just get drunk, and it's just like
Tuesday,
and it's just like a Tuesday. It's on a Tuesday as well.
There you go. It's a weird thing, but Ireland has suffered hugely under colonialism, right? And
from the English, yes, yeah, from the English, yeah. I mean, it's not too long ago either, so it's still a bit of a small issue sometimes.
Yeah, I say has. I mean, is still. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even still now, but this is nothing about books or whatever, but it's fine.
But it's also about books, because I don't know about you, but colonialism comes up a lot.
It does, yeah. It really does. It really does, yeah. Like it was funny because, like, obviously, it's still not even sorted out. With Brexit and everything, because because Ireland is like still in Europe, but we are like, so you have Europe, then you have England.
But then Northern Ireland is stuck.
Northern Ireland is still in England.
Yeah.
But they're not in Europe, but they're attached to us. But we're like behind England, and Europe is basically, England is in between us and Europe, right? So if we're getting anything sent from Europe,
it's got to go all the way around.
way around. Oh, it's got to go through England, and everything was getting delayed and like custom charges. So like Amazon were just like, we're not printing books anymore. If they don't have it in stock in Ireland anymore, like you're gonna have to get it from America or something, or it's gonna take months to get there. So it was like, so with my we've had a few books out with my publisher. Like they were like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get you these books? I was like, I don't.
Ingram has a UK Euro printing.
Yes, yeah. So that's what we
Printed.
did. Yeah, that's what we did. We ended up getting them printed there, sent to Northern Ireland, and then sent from Northern Ireland to the Southern Ireland. And it was like, it works. But it's crazy. And it's like, again, it's the British they're just making us pay for something that we had nothing to do with.
It's so ridiculous. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. I have nothing to do with it, having not been British for a very long time. But even
the Queen is still the head of your state, I believe.
That's true. I know. That's the weird thing about Canada, right? It's so freaky. Yeah. And a bunch of statues of the Queen got toppled yesterday.
I saw that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It was like,
yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. There was a big, there was a big kind of that was all the rage in 2020, wasn't it? Toppling statues of people that shouldn't have statues.
Yep. Yeah. It's pretty decent choice, really, as far as protest goes. I think.
As pastimes, as hobbies go.
Yeah, as hobbies go. Yeah, that's right. As hobbies go. We're gonna take these slave owners and these colonial monarchs and these, we're just gonna
throw them in the sea. That's what they're doing in Bristol. I don't know if you've heard about Bristol, but like it was, they were just tearing them down and throwing them into the sea, and it was like, that's great.
And it cracks me up, the people who are angry about it. They're like, but this piece of history of a slave shipping trash mine, like what?
you want to be associated with that, really? Still, like, doesn't look good.
And as if the statue like is the entirety of the history, like you can't tell that story without the statue up.
It's like the statue's gone, so that no one knows what happened anymore.
Now it's gone. Yeah, it's erased. That's how that works.
So that was a fun detour anyway. So who knew? This is the stuff that we should have been talking about before we started recording, but it's fun.
Well, we did a little bit. We just sort of kept going.
Yeah. So you're one of the many hats that you wear is obviously you're a brilliant author.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of you to say.
Yes, well, it's true. And your latest book is there behind you, Sairo's Claw, which is in the same universe as the Gensokai Chronicles.
Yeah, Sairo's Claw. Oh, let's see if we can make it show.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful cover.
Thank you. I was hoping that would show right side up, but it doesn't. The whole thing is left side.
What I'll do is I'll put all the links for everything in below anyway, and so everyone will be able to find it. So this is, you've created like a universe that is quite. It's not based on Earth or anything. It's not based on it's not Japan or it's not Asia or anything, but it's very that kind of themed. But like a lot of the books as well, they're kind of, you don't have to read them in order either. You can jump in, because I read Sairo's Claw first before anything else. Gone back through then to go that way. So first of all, I mean, you lived in Japan for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I lived in Japan for 2 years and loved it. Really only came back because of the aforementioned dog, who was living with family and friends. She spent a year with my mom and then a year with a good friend of mine. And and I was just really missing my dog. I just really wanted to come back, because missing 2 years of a dog's life that's a big chunk of time.
Yeah, definitely.
And she was, my fur child. So I was, not that stoked about missing that time with her. Anyway, so yeah, I came back for that. Otherwise, I could have happily stayed in Japan for a much longer period of time. It was really cool. But yeah, and while I was there is when I started writing Blade's Edge, and I actually wrote the entire first draft of Blade's Edge in Japan. And my first year there, I think, at the end of my first year there. And yeah, I definitely cribbed a ton of culture and history to make a world that's very much inspired by feudal Japan in terms of the culture, but inspired by, like, it's not actually samurai culture. There's a lot of changes I made that are not historically accurate, you know, and all of that. Yeah, and then what was, oh gosh, came back, and I just, you know, I love that world so much, and I just keep writing in it.
So was it with kind of like the world building, because there's like some absolutely stunning world building in the book that you have. Was that something that when you sat down to write it, was it something that was always in your head that you wanted to kind of have that feel, or was it something that you were like, you know, was it something that you'd always wanted to write that in that kind of start, you know, in that kind of like Eastern kind of flavor, or was it something that was just because where you were living and you were like, okay, I'm here now and I can kind of pour all this kind of inspiration in?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of both, right? Like, I started studying a Japanese martial art when I was about 10. And then I wasn't living in Japan until I was about 26, I think. So good chunk of time between there, but I'd been studying karate, Shotokan style karate for a long time. And I had always wanted to go to Japan. I hadn't necessarily always wanted to write fantasy set there, but I'd always wanted to write fantasy. And it wasn't until I was there living in just this gorgeous landscape. Like, the area of Japan we lived in was, and many areas of Japan are mountainous and also right next to the ocean. And so, like, it's just verdant and lush. The place that we lived in had a really severe winter as well. Lots of snow and fairly cold. Not now that I've lived in Manitoba, not that cold, but fairly cold. And it just a gorgeous landscape that I really wanted to bring to life while I was telling the story. So it was more that I was inspired by a number of things in the area around me and the culture that I was just sort of incidentally studying by going to all these places. The amazing thing about Japan is that you can, in 5 minutes, go from one of the most modern settings you've ever seen in your life to something that's 3,000 years old.
Yeah.
And like, not just like objects, but places. Like, they just, you know, buildings and whole courtyards and trees, and just like, and it feels very much like stepping back in time because of how well preserved things are. And a lot of stuff didn't survive World War II, but a few pieces did, because, well, for various reasons, some of which was direct appeals from people who had been to Japan saying, please, please, please don't destroy this city. And some of it was just incidental, you know, like they and then, so like that, we're not going to go open that can of worms because there's a huge amount of issues to be discussed there. But at any rate, there are some, like the area that we lived in, there were some really amazingly ancient places. And just that feel was something I wanted to capture. And it was part of the reason I was inspired to write a fantasy setting there. And so, which is interesting because to me, like, in fact, I think Blade's Edge was the first book I wrote where the setting was a huge part of what I wanted to capture. Often to me, and even in the sequels to Blade's Edge, the setting is somewhat secondary to the story and the characters. I always go back and add it in, and it amazes me the number of readers who are like, oh, the setting, the world building so lush. And it's true that I, like, in terms of the world building, culture, etc., I have like thousands upon thousands of words of notes. And I've probably written more world building and character notes than I've written actual text for the books. But I keep all that, you know, just in its own place, and it's not, I don't put it in the books, except it like sprinkled in. But in terms of the physical setting, when I write a first draft, with the exception of the first draft of Blade's Edge, but usually when I write a first draft, action, 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 dialogue, 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 run the story through to the end, boom. And then I have to go back, and in the rewrite, I add the physical setting.
Yeah.
It's there in my head the whole time, because when I write a scene, it plays in my head like a movie, and I can see everything that's happening, and it like that includes the setting. But it's not something that my brain feels the need to transcribe at the time, unless it's getting pulled into the action. And so it's very much a thing that I add in revisions. Like second draft is for adding the setting. But that wasn't true of Blade's Edge, because Blade's Edge, I was so hugely inspired by where I was that I actually spent a lot of time in the first draft describing the scenery, and in fact had to cut fair portions of it out because it was maybe a little too heavy-handed. Yeah, but that's the only book I've written where that was true. And it's just because I was just sitting in in these glorious places and going, how do I gotta get this in there. Like I want this in the book, you know?
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting process. And it's, I'd be like how you are for Blade's Edge. That's my thing. I'm just like, I'll do like a paragraph and I'll go back and I'll edit it and then I'll do it again and and that's like, so my first drafts are usually quite like polished, I suppose, but it's like, it's not really a first draft. It's like the 20th draft of whatever it is. But I should really just do what you do, because it'd be so much sort of just get the story out and then I can go back and add the other things in that I want to put in.
It's all, I mean, whatever works. Like if what you're doing feels good to you, then just keep doing that, because honestly,
does it feel good?
Okay. That's a fair, but here, like for me personally, so I have ADHD, and for my brain, literally, if I get too bogged down in word choice, revisions, and details in the first draft, I won't tell the story. Like the number of drafts I abandoned when I was trying to do that because I thought that's what you had to do is quite few. I have, I don't know, maybe 10 manuscripts that just die at the 15, 20,000 word mark, largely because of that.
Right.
And that's from way back. Those are all like when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. I think I was 25, I think, when I finished the very first time I finished a draft of a novel. Right. And it was because of National Novel Writing Month, to be perfectly honest. I'm one of those people, but I'm not like I don't think it's for everyone, right? Like I loved it. It worked so well for me, but that doesn't mean it's gonna work for everybody else. But for me, gagging my inner editor, shutting that voice up and just telling the story all the way through was revelatory. It was how I figured out that I could actually write novels, because I get bored really easily. And if I'm not telling myself the story just to find out what the hell happens, I'm not into writing it. And so I don't outline, really. Not even like some people, I like to say that I'm like, oh, well, I like to at least have an idea of the ending, because everybody says that. But the truth is I often don't. Like I'll be perfectly frank, I don't actually know how the arc from Sairo's Claw to the next book and maybe a third actually ends. I mean, I kind of like, I have a vague idea, but I don't know exactly how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And that can be risky, but it also is manageable. Like, I don't know, but it's just, for me, it's like, that's the fun. The fun is figuring out the story. And I like to think I've dropped enough foreshadowing of the things I think are going to happen that it'll all wrap up nicely and look really intentional. But it's just
yeah. That's funny though, you can say that, because like I'm reading. I'm very near the end of Blade's Edge now, and obviously I've read Sairo's Claw as well. And like there's they fit together, even though it's in the same world, it's different characters and everything, but they fit together so well. Like it feels like it's just, it feels like it's not just, it doesn't feel like it's just like a different world altogether. And it really feels like there was a plan, because I think it's obviously the world building helps, but the history of it helps as well. There's like a lot of history in the world that you put in there. Are you a history buff?
That's so hard to say, because history buff, not by most standard definitions, because I'll tell you what I am the worst at academically is history classes, because I suck at remembering names and dates.
Yes.
And so I have nearly failed every history course I've ever taken, because guess what they always test you on? Names and dates.
Dates, yeah.
But conceptually, I adore history, like the idea of what has happened before, and like the way that can be used to prevent the same sorts of atrocities from happening. But also just knowing where we've come from. I find that very interesting. And so so on a scale of like me enjoying reading about the history of actual places on Earth, I love it.
Yeah.
Just don't ask me to tell you any details about it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of my own books, I have written, again, thousands upon thousands of words of notes, and Gensokai has a really long and complicated history. And in the back of my head for years now, pretty much ever since I finished Blade's Edge, has been the idea of, and this is not a spoiler for Blade's Edge at all, or any of the other books, of a history of the Yuaku, which are the supposedly evil clan of female Kisoshi that made the Roju Council like come into existence and start being horrible to women. And of course, that history is not what we think it is, right? As far as the people of Gensokai in Blade's Edge, Trader's Hope, and moving into Sairo's Claw, like they have what they think is the history, and then there's the actual history, and the actual history has been percolating in my mind for years as another series of books, because there's some really cool characters that are involved in that. And luckily, one of the characters in Sairo's Claw, you may have noticed, is an historian, essentially.
Yeah.
Among other things, right? She's and that may become relevant. she may discover some things that she's going to have to share with people. And so that's all of that's probably down the pipeline for things. And I'm like, part of me wants to write in a different world, and part of me is like, I could spend the next 20 years just writing books in Gensokai in different parts of the timeline.
I hope you do, to be honest with you, because I love it. So it's like, and that's why I ask you. Like, I like that character as well. Like the historian. I like a historian character that's in a fantasy world, because it's always a great way to like just bring in all these like little intriguing nuggets of information and everything. It's funny as well though, because like I mean, my books are a very different setting to yours, but we touch upon quite a lot of the same themes in our work as well, which is crazy, because we only met like doing Coroncon, so it was but it's interesting because with like kind of false history and everything, that's something that I'm very interested in as well. Like the truth that you're told isn't always the truth that actually happened and everything. So
having listened to your reading of the opening of your latest book, I can already see where that's going. Like it was very just from that. I don't know if it was the prologue you read or if it was just the first chapter, but
it was the prologue. Yeah, that was right.
Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I see where this is. And there's just it's clearly some parallels right away, which is fun, and it really makes me really want to read that book. So it's there.
It'll be around for a while. Don't worry about it. It's there forever now. So I mean, it's an action adventure fantasy romp. It's got sea battles. Obviously, it's got a wolf spirit, historians, set in a world that's living and breathing. So tell us a little bit about if people that are watching and they're going to go and buy Sairo's Claw, what would you like them to know about it going into it?
I mean, not too much, because I like books to take people by surprise. I think you've covered the most salient points. It's an action adventure fantasy romp. There's a badass mom character. It's only women POV at this point. It's kind of all I write. And I don't know, what should people know? There's some sea battles.
Yeah,
which I had a lot of fun writing. There are There are a lot of battles.
Yeah,
Someone
that was great as
someone
well.
recently described it as just a chase book that's like basically an
Yeah,
ongoing chase. I hadn't really thought of, but it kind of is. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, at least half the book is chase scenes, so that sort of makes sense.
You know,
but not
it kind of reminded me of in terms of like the pace of it is,
Yeah.
you know, Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
It reminds me of, and I love Mad Max Fury Road. I think it's my favorite film of the last 10 years, I think. And it's
I take that as a great compliment if it reminds you of that.
yeah, it does mean it sets off and it's just like forward motion all the time. And it's just like great action scenes, great characters, and how that has that like this hint of like this world and this big history in behind it. Your book. Sorry, I'm going out. I'm so emotional about it with my voice.
Oh, you're sick.
It's like I'm choking up. No, but like I just being transported back into to the book. No, but that's what it reminds me of. It's like it's like the fantasy version of Mad Max Fury Road, which I could not give the highest praise to.
I will take that. I like it. I might put it on the cover.
Yeah,
may I quote you on that?
You can.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a fun adventure. It is, yeah, it does not require any familiarity with the world at all. I want that to be really clear. The only reason it's not sitting as its own series already is just that I wanted the people who read Blade's Edge and Trader's Hope to be able to find it easily.
Yeah.
And as soon as the next book is ready to come out or even be up for pre-order, I will shift it into its own series. I might even do it before that because there's been a little bit of confusion about that, even though I added the subtitle with it having its own. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Weird book details, but yes, I just want it to be really, really clear to anyone who's coming in that it kicks off its own new series. You don't have to have read anything else written by me ever before in order to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And it will continue. I think is very, very evident at the end of the book that it will continue, even though it does wrap up its own plot. I want everyone to know it does not end on that kind of cliffhanger. It does end on a sort of cliffhanger, but not that kind of cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Most of its own plot gets covered.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I can attest to that as well. I mean, it was the first book that I read of yours, and I had no problem getting into it at all whatsoever. So it was. Yeah, you can definitely read this one first. So, other than the writing, you also make yourself very, very busy at certain parts of the year by doing Chronicles.
Yeah, I kind of like stupidly busy at the and shout out to Pam while we're here because
yeah.
Chronicles would not happen without her or any of the other volunteers, of which there are a good dozen at this point, I think, that are still around. After the first one and now after the second one. So many thanks to everyone who helped out, yourself included. Yeah, I do QuaranCon. It's fun. It's fun to do. I really enjoy doing the off-season bit where I just interview authors. I mean, it's meant to be more than authors. And so far I've interviewed one physicist who happens to be my brother. But and also, but like I wanted to have it be like interviewing creative people in general, like, and just so also interviewing artists and other stuff. But most of the people I know and have relatively easy access to are authors. So it winds up being a series of author interviews, which is great. And I love doing it. So that's really fun. And then QuaranCon itself is fantastic and is the thing that most people get most excited about. It involves so much work that I don't really get to enjoy it until it's over. And so whereas like the interviews are laid back enough that it's like those are fun while they're happening. And QuaranCon is more like it's type 2 fun. Once it's done, it makes makes a great story, but while it's happening, it's like just sort of panic mode and make sure everything goes. Although actually this year going at it the second time was smoother than the first year, and we sort of had more of our ducks in a row.
Yeah, so, it was pretty fun. I mean, I was like, obviously I helped out volunteer for some bit and I was doing something. I had so much fun. I was really sad when it was finished, to be honest with you. Oh, it's done now. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. I mean, it was great just to kind of it's great just like meet new people and get people to kind of do it. But I mean, loads of the workshops and panels that you put on were so informative as well. And they weren't kind of like your usual. I mean, there was some of the usual ones that you'll find, like um, story arcs and character arcs and stuff. But you had like some very kind of specific ones about representation and diversity and everything, which were really like, were so interesting to watch. It was obviously for me as like a straight white man. It's just like it's really interesting to kind of read that kind of stuff and just kind of see where other people are coming from. And that's one of the great things I find about indie fantasy in particular is that
Yeah.
there's so many different voices that are emerging. Like one of my favorite books in the last few years is Sword of Kaigan, which I think is something that I probably would never have come across 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, it pushes a few few envelopes in terms of choices and stuff. And the author is one of my favorite people, if she's watching.
yeah, because I mean, she helps out with Foreign Con as well. And I was amazed.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like had a little fanboy moment at one point because we were all like having a chat, and then I realized it was her. And I was like, oh my god.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm gonna call her ML here because she prefers to not have her real name bandied about on the internet. But so yeah, ML is like one of the nicest people ever, and also very down to earth. So it's always fun. But yeah, and she does a huge amount of tech for us, and for QuaranCon, which is just fabulous. And so and she also is a moderator for a few panels and stuff, but she just she's one of our tech people, which is the biggest job that we've got really for the actual duration of the con. That's like, I mean, it's like being the tech people at an actual convention where you're like the person who's responsible for the microphones working, like it's like but even more than that, like with a virtual convention, if the tech person isn't there, there is no event. Whereas like, you could shout in a convention room and try to like still have your panel even without mics, but you there's really like nothing's happening if there's not a tech
You
person.
can just stand on a table and say, everyone just come closer.
Yeah, exactly. Gather around, people, gather around.
I'll tell you a story. So where did you get the idea for QuaranCon? Because I mean, like I was amazed when I mean, coming into it on the second year, and I thought it was really like obviously I didn't see all the stuff behind the scenes that you had to deal with. But I thought it was very, very smooth. So I was amazed. I thought it'd been going on for years. And then when you were like, oh, it's only the second one, I was like, that's quite impressive.
Well, thank you. The first year it was just, the lockdown hit, and I just watched all of the conventions I usually go to get canceled. Mm-hmm. And so did everyone else. And like con season was just clearly not going to happen. And it was obvious that it was, like a downer emotionally, but also a fiscal downer for a lot of people. Like, I mean, I make a huge amount of money with in-person sales at conventions. And so my income took a hit too. Not the degree to which a lot of people do, because I don't sell that much, but it is a like proportionately a large portion of my annual income. And so I just was like, oh crap, well, what can we do? And I wasn't sure about the financial piece behind it. I was like, okay, but we'll have an artist alley thing. That I think is the thing we've been least successful with, is sort of getting eyes on our artist alley and having that create any sort of benefit to the artists. Like, I don't know. I saw no uptick in sales really during QuaranCon. I don't know if other artists do. We try to have all the moderators mention it in every panel and get people to look at it, but I'm not sure that there's much of a draw there. Especially in the second year, like I think people are sort of online sales out, like they're just like online sold out. They're just like, I've bought enough things online. Yes. And QuaranCon too, like hit at a dip, like a pretty much worldwide sales dip in books, where it was like people had just started going back to work in a lot of like physically in a lot of places, and had just sort of stopped buying all the books that they had started binge buying at the start of the so anyway, it didn't really work out. But yeah, that was my idea, was like, let's get eyes on these people's work, and let's have a convention, let's have the fun of panels and all this other stuff. And it was, the first year was very hastily thrown together. I legit sent out a Twitter form, like, who would be interested in this? And thank goodness I did a form when I did it, because that one went like hundreds of retweets and stuff, and so many people signed up, and I was just like, okay, apparently this is a thing that people want to do. And then I was like, okay, how quickly can I turn this into an actual thing that's happening? And this is where, ADHD brain kicked in and was helpful, because I was like, great, I'm not doing anything else but making a convention happen in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it was. So we went from idea to actual convention in an insanely short period of time. I delegated like mad to make it happen. Like, there was no way I was going to be able to do it myself, but I just like onboarded all these people who said they wanted to volunteer. And I was like, okay, here's a sheet of all the things that need to be done. Sign up for the things you feel capable of doing. And then people signed up, and I was like, great, you're now in charge of this thing. And people were like, wait, what, I'm in charge of it? I was like, yeah, you said you could do it, and now you're doing it. And they were like, okay. And so, but that largely worked. And then I wound up being the person in charge of the website and the back end of the tech stuff, because there was no real way to delegate that. Or at least, yeah, I also kind of didn't want to, because those are the things I could contribute myself. So then it was sorting out Zoom and sorting out how to get that to broadcast to YouTube, and then like checking out different streaming things. And I tried to do StreamYard, but it was like, did not want to work with my laptop. And I was like, I don't have time to get new equipment. So sorry, StreamYard, we're moving, like, it's like just going to be Zoom, and I was like, this is expensive, and then how many accounts do we need? And blah. Anyway. And then we had a convention, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, it was so smooth, it was so great, it was so, and and meanwhile I had just been like panicking in the background the entire time. This isn't working.
For the next 2 weeks afterwards, you were just coffee on an IV drip into your
or I just slept for like a week afterwards. And then and then this year we tried to be more intentional with it, and tried to make a point of getting a more representative body of authors involved, just like the first thing was just like legit just whoever signed up, because it was like, I put this out on Twitter, and then these people signed up, and like now we take these people and we put them into panels, and there was no other intention behind it other than that. This year was like, okay, like the SFF world is a super diverse body of people, and I want to actually represent that, but that's going to require effort on our part to make sure that everybody feels welcome and everybody feels like they should sign up, and then put people on panels that are relevant to them, like history and world building. And like I don't want to be the con that's like, we'll have one diverse panel and it'll be the diversity panel, like I would like us to have lots of panels with all the voices that we can get. And I think every single panel should have as many voices as we can get. And so that was more the focus this year. It was trying to make scheduling happen with that. And I think we made a huge improvement there, and there's still room for more. And I want to do even better with that next year, just to represent SFF the way it is. Like, we have this amazing population of authors, and I want to represent us. I want our con to be actually representative of the population. And so we'll work even harder to make more improvements next year. But I'm proud of how big an improvement it was from our first year to our second year. And I'm proud, and the first year, I'm proud of how it went for just a quick, make it happen, but yeah, I think, that's
yeah, it was fantastic. And obviously, for anyone that are watching, if you go to, I'll have the links below for the QuaranCon channel on YouTube. All the readings from authors, the panels, the workshops from the last 2 years, and then all the kind of interviews and everything you do in between are all there. There's so much stuff there to look through. And there's so many really interesting videos, just like authors that you've probably heard of, some authors that you may never have heard of, and just go and check them out. Speaking of which, much we'll wrap up this little segment is that we're both doing something at the moment with the Indie Fantasy Addicts Facebook group, which is the summer reading challenge, where you basically
Yeah.
just read as many books as you possibly can and
Yeah.
get some points so that your
Yeah.
team has the bragging rights, I suppose, and some other probably other things too. So we're in rival
I
teams.
think you get some free books basically if you
Yes.
win. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Which
is
is always
great. You've read so many books. Here's some more.
which honestly, if you're a person who just loves reading books, you're like, yes, this is the award I wanted.
This is fantastic.
I don't need a trophy collecting dust on my shelf. I want more books.
More books. Give them to me. Just put them into my brain. Just download
Yeah.
them. So we're in opposite teams. Well, there's more than one team, but we're in different teams, sadly. But that's the way it is. So what is it? What's on? What have you read during the challenge? And what is next on your plate as well for it?
So far, I have finished, because this is the thing, I read multiple books at a time.
You're one of those people.
I'm one of those people. And I finished reading Thorn of the Night Blossoms by J.C. Kong, and which I enjoyed thoroughly. I really enjoy his writing style, and I really enjoy that world. I've read the entire Dragon Song Saga series. Actually, okay, I say the entire. I've read 3 out of 4 books. I still have to read the last one. I was worried it was going to break my heart, so I put it off for a while, and then a while turned into like a year and a half, 2 years. Like, so I need to actually go back.
Yeah.
And finish that. But I really enjoyed dipping back into that world and following my favorite character, who is not the main character in the main series. She's a secondary character, and so having her have her own books has been very exciting. And so so I finished that, and I am currently reading Heir to the Dark Mage by Lisa Cassidy, and really enjoying that. I'm about 60% of the way through that one. But that is a much longer book. I'm also reading White Sheep of the Family, which is also by J.C. Kong. But I was like, oh, I should spread this out. But then like I should actually just read all of those novellas, because I'll get a lot of points, because they're all over 150 pages, but they're also like just over 150 pages. So you get like maximum points. And and I can review them all. Plus, John Kong is a delightful human who is one of like the reasons I have a fantasy authoring career, if we can call it that. It's like
I think we can.
Because he like early on just like took me under his wing, which he does with a lot of people. He's super sweet, and he will just like, he finds new authors and he's like, come join our group promotion, and it's fantastic. And he's the one who told me about Spiffbo, and so I would not have had a finalist in Spiffbo were it not.
That's the thing. Blade's Edge was a finalist as well, which we didn't mention. So like obviously, and there's so many books that get entered into that competition. So to become a finalist is some achievement.
It's an achievement. It's also a lot of luck. I'm proud of Blade's Edge, and I'm delighted, but I don't. So many good books get cut from Spiffbo. I just want that to be known to people, because it's down to which other books are in your blog and what that blogger's preferences are. And there are a lot of really, really good books that could absolutely be finalists that get cut in the first round because they weren't to a blogger's taste, and which is totally fine. That is the nature of the competition. It's not a criticism. It's just the way it is. But I just want everyone to know that, because I feel like everyone's like, oh yeah, I was a finalist, and I'm like, yes, thank you. I delight in the quality of of that book, and I love. Like I've said this a bajillion times, but the thing that I got most out of being a finalist was 9 best friends, because I still talk to my fellow Spiffbo finalists from 2019 every day. But anyway, yes. So Spiffbo is great, and I absolutely am proud of Blade's Edge having been a finalist, but I don't want to completely erase the amount of luck that was involved in having the right people read it at the right time.
I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice there as well, like just a little small. is. It's a great book. And
Thank you.
anyone that's watching, that's not picked up Virginia's work before, start with Blade's Edge or Sairo's Claw. Get both of them, really, to be honest with you. And then, start which one you want to go with. You won't be disappointed either way. Check out Quarrencon. And if you have any recommendations for Virginia to add to her 150 books that she has on her PBR pile, all the details will below. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Fifth time lucky, and any other time, I always really enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. It's been delightful, and I'm very pleased to be here. And thank you, everyone who's watching, if any of you actually are. If anybody bothers to show up.
Anyone people just watched the first 5 minutes and was like, I'll come back to this.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they watched all of it. Thanks very much.